What if Doctor Who wasn't axed in 1989? Since 2016, I've been exploring this concept, creating a detailed and rich alternate timeline, following each decision to the next through cause and effect, as well as a lot, and I mean a lot, of guesswork. Panopticon Series 7 would have aired between the 8th of June 2013 and the 27th of July 2013, beginning just 3 weeks after the end of Conference Series 2 and only 12 weeks after the end of Panopticon Series 6, making this the second series of Panopticon to air in 2013, and also the final series of Panopticon overall. This series would have featured the return of Timothy Dalton as the Rogue after his surprise return at the end of Series 6. However, Timothy Dalton would be given the special and Timothy Dalton credit, instead of top billing, like he had in Series 1 to 4. The above-the-line production team would remain the same for the series, however there would be some few changes in the general crew due to Series 7 being shot many months after Series 5 and 6. Due to storytelling reasons, this series was reduced from 10 episodes to 8 episodes, all 60 minutes in length, apart from the 8th episode and the grand finale, which should be 90 minutes in length, giving it a similar overall series running time to that of Series 4 to 6. The title sequence would remain the same as Series 5 and 6 titles, with the billing changed slightly. Now it would read David Tennant, Emma Caulfield, Juliet Landau, Claire William, Graham McTavish, Miranda Raisin, Eleanor Matsura, and Timothy Dalton. So, without further ado, let's dive into this final series of Panopticon. Will Adams, neither human nor Time Lord, alone in a strange land called Earth, isolated and vulnerable, missing for years and years, filled with strange memories of living on a distant planet called Gallifrey. Now he must seek help, but is that what he really needs? This episode starts with the vacuum of space, where we get a voiceover from Will, summarising his life and what's happened to him over the course of the last 6 series of Panopticon, intercut with corresponding footage. Then we see Will lying on a therapist's bed, continuing his voiceover, but now we see him actually saying it to someone. And then he gets to Kendra's death. The moment flashes up reprised, all the pain haunting Will. Then we hear a voice, a familiar voice, of his therapist. He says, "Will, you went missing for 5 years. I can't tell you where, but you most certainly were not on Gallifrey. You were here on Earth somewhere. All of this is a product of your mind, and you need to forget it for your own good." And as he says this, we pan around Will's therapy bed chair thing, and we see the therapist sitting on the chair opposite, taking notes. He was none other than Jason Isaac's master. This scene of Will and the master stretches across the entire episode, with everything else sort of intercut between, with this as like the framing device. We then follow Will as he gets off a bus, and he walks to a street close by, where he looks up at a window in a semi-detached house. We see Belinda in there with her boyfriend Harry. Will looks heartbroken, and it goes from bad to worse when he sees them kiss. We intercut with the therapy session with Will describing his feelings of what he does. He in fact waits around for Belinda to leave the house, then he confronts her. He pleads her to hear him out, to give him a chance. That he's going to a therapist now, but before Belinda can do anything, Harry walks out the door and tells Will to go away, shouting at him angrily. This is then where we take a break in the story and cut to Gallifrey. For ease of me telling this plot, I'm going to continue with the whole Will plot for this episode now, and then I'll go what's going on in Gallifrey and the Vex Sphere and all that. So just imagine it all cuts together neatly ever so often. We then follow Will as he goes to a church at midnight. The bell strikes and he prays. We see him remember Kendra and her death, and he feels that pain. Back at the clinic, he admits to the Master that he really wishes everything was real, and that he really wasn't Gallifrey, and that he really wants to go back, but he knows it's not real. Then the Master pulls him in and simply tells him, "It is real. You are a Time Lord, Will Adams, and so am I." On the Vex Sphere, the Seal were brought before the Council of Six, who are actually 5 at this moment, for a hearing after the fallout of the Series 6 finale. After a few minutes and very much of a show trial, they are proven guilty beyond all doubt and are sentenced for execution. We then follow a small shuttlecraft as it zooms through space towards a familiar space station, Cold Star. The Rogue steps off the shuttle, still with his beard, and onto the station. There he meets a woman, Iris, and the Rogue asks her if they're ready to make the big push, and she replies with yes. We cut to the council chamber, and the council are aiming guns at the Seal members, moments away from shooting them dead. However, outside there's a rapid gunfire, and the council chamber is blown right open. A voice booms down from the ship, the Rogues. He says hello to Francis, and tells him to step on the shuttle and get onto his ship. Most of them make it out, but Andark is killed in the attack, and the council manage to detain Phaedra and Zenna. Now with the combined strength of the Seal and Unity, the Rogue must put pieces together to complete his mission. Meanwhile, the Council of Six must select a new heroic. This episode begins with the Master explaining that he's stuck in this time period on Earth due to the fact that his TARDIS won't travel in time anymore, due to the destruction of the Eye of Harmony. However, the Master theorises that the point in space where Will landed might be a weak point in space and time, and by using a TARDIS in that point, they may be able to get back to the 3460s by harnessing the time energy. The Master materialises his TARDIS in Will's flat, and they attempt to take off, and something starts to happen, but it fails. Will gets a phone call halfway through, knocking off the systems. He answers it, and it's Belinda. She apologises for her behaviour and asks if he wants to meet up to properly talk things over. The Master tells him, "You must agree." Meanwhile, on the Vex Sphere, we follow the Council as they elect a new heroic. From a number of candidates nominated by each member of the Council, Irene wins out. She offers a fresh new approach to the Vex, which Osmus supports, especially as she voluntarily became a Vex. But unlike the original batch from the Serenity dimension, she didn't undergo the purging of her previous life and kept both Irene's and the Vex's identities, and she embraced them, as well as keeping her original name, although it will now be changed to Heroic. Francis's shuttle arrives on the main ship in Iris's fleet. The Rogue welcomes them and explains to them that over the past few months after the Alliance was invaded, rebels from across all the planets came together to form a resistance called Unity, which comprises of over 1,000 ships and a vast network of members, all working to rid our universe of the Vex. They have developed technology to cross between realities safely. Zen then tells the Rogue that they've created a working time travel device that's in the main chamber building on the Vex Sphere. Iris explains that they are readying a full-on assault of the Vex Sphere, and one of the outcomes is now to recapture the time travel device. They still launch their attack, and a battle takes place. Francis comes face to face with Irene. Irene tells Francis just to leave and nothing will happen. Francis stares at her, contemplating this, and then she does as she says. Gorgia finds Phaedra's and Zenna's cell and frees them. They get within sight of their shuttle before Phaedra pulls her gun on Gorgia and tells him to put his hands in the air, explaining that Osmus has pardoned her and asked her to lead up the Vex security service. The Rogue and Francis make it back to the control room and activate the portal again, keying it to the previous coordinates. The Rogue tells Francis that he's going to go back himself and get the Convalesce himself. The Rogue then jumps through the portal and Francis closes it. We then see the Rogue arrive on Earth in the middle of a busy London high street. Now on Earth, the Rogue must locate Will Adams and bring him back to the Vex Sphere. However, there may be some more complications than he initially expected. We begin with Will meeting Belinda at a cafe, and he tells her what has happened, and that while he may have thought it was a dream, the Master proves to him that he was real. Belinda gets frustrated at Will, as she thought he was past this. She tells him that he needs to move on. The rogue explores London, trying to find his way around, and he ends up in a public library where he looks at Will Adams and finds his address. The rogue goes to Will's flat where he finds the Master. They face off, and the Master works out that the rogue used time travel technology to get here, and he must have a recall device. The rogue asks where Will is, and the Master tells him. The rogue offers to help him return to Gallifrey if he helps him bring Will back. The Master agrees. Will and Belinda are interrupted in the cafe by the Master and the rogue. Will is horrified to see the rogue, much to his surprise. He feels used by the rogue, and he blames him for Kendra's death. Will says he wants to stay with the Master. Belinda is shocked, but she realises that Will isn't lying, and he was in fact telling the truth. How else could this all happen? The rogue tries to persuade Will to come with him, as he is much more important than he might think. Will shouts back, "What the hell does that mean? You keep saying it, but what does it mean?" To which the rogue simply says, "Your dreams." Will's shocked to see how the rogue knows about it, but the rogue says that Will must return in order to fulfill his purpose, whether he likes it or not. The rogue activates his recall device, grabbing onto Will as he transports back to the Vex Sphere. However, at the last moment, Belinda grabs onto Will too, and is taken with them. The Master's left there, feeling cheated and double-crossed. Furious. During this, we focus on Unity's attack on the Vex Sphere, and it's coming to an end, and they are very much winning. The Council managed to escape in a secret gateway from the Vex Sphere to Gallifrey, and the gateway works because it's in the exact same point in both dimensions. Phaedra, Zenla and Gorgia are taken with them as prisoners. Unity managed to win the battle and take the Vex Sphere as their base of operations. The Vex set up in the Citadel on Gallifrey. Phaedra takes Zenla and Gorgia into the council chamber, and Osmus and Phaedra explain everything. They want to reform society, make it a truly wonderful place, discarding the house ideals, and they need their help. They need an outside perspective who isn't Vex. They are open to it but not convinced, and they don't believe them. Phaedra wants assurance that there will be freedom of choice. Osmus, realising that he needs their help, reluctantly agrees. The episode ends with the rogue, Will and Belinda arriving on the Vex Sphere. Back in the far future, Will and Belinda grow accustomed to their new life. However, things get complicated when they attend Kendra's funeral. Meanwhile, the Council of Six formulate a plan to invade Earth. We begin with Belinda waking up hot and sweaty in a bed. She gets up and looks confused, looks around, then remembers. She's not on Earth. She finds Will's room and wakes him up. She tells him that she's sorry for everything. We also find out that it's Kendra's funeral tomorrow. She gets in his bed and they hug. Kendra's funeral follows the same structure as the Doctor's. Will gives the eulogy, and he pours out his heart and soul into it. Belinda sits on watching the audience, growing more and more uncomfortable throughout. Later, Will confronts the rogue and asks him to explain what is meant by his dreams. The rogue tells him that he's the confidence, and he is vital to the survival of all natural life in this universe. Will wants more answers, but the rogue tells him that he will find out at the proper moment. Meanwhile, we focus on Iris as she plans, along with the rest of Unity, to use the time travel gateway to go back in time 10 years and stop the Vex from ever infiltrating this universe. Francis, Roden and Iris get ready to go on the mission with a small group of soldiers by their side. Meanwhile on Gallifrey, Erd updates the Council on the situation with the Mitahai. Eric is unimpressed. She informs him that this plan with the Mitahai is simply stupid. What is the point in invading such a way when Vex methods have proved to work so well for centuries? Osmus, however, puts his foot down and says they are going to go along with El's plan. Eric interrupts him and tells him that he's overruling democracy, the exact same thing he was fighting against when he overthrew the Howl. She calls for a vote within the council, and they vote in favour of continuing with their arrangement with the Mitahai. Al gives the order to begin the initiative on Earth. Osmus goes to a vet's laboratory and sees the progress on the replication of the machine they used to open the wormhole to the Sereti dimension, in the hopes to be able to close it on their command to trap Unity in the Sereti dimension. Phaedra presents a plan to the council that she made with Zenla and Gorgia for cohabitation with normal biological life forms. However, the council reject it as they find it too radical. Eric stands up for the plan, suggesting some tweaks as a compromise, but this isn't enough. Osmus then broadcasts a speech to the Vex Sphere, proclaiming an ultimatum. Either Unity surrender and volunteer for ascension, or they are forever trapped in the Sereti dimension. Travelling back 10 years to the formation of the Alliance of Planets, Unity try and avert the infiltration of Vex into Gallifreyan society. Meanwhile, the Rogue tries to strike a deal with the Vex. We begin with Francis, Rodan and Iris travelling through the time gateway to 3451 as they land in the Panopticon during the Rogue's speech forming the Alliance of Planets. Francis goes to the Rogue's office and waits before the Rogue enters. He asks who she is and what she wants. She tells him to close the door. Francis explains that she is the future incarnation of Francis, by Christopher Biggins, and that she is from the future and she has come back to stop a catastrophe. She warns the Rogue that the Starship Battalion must not be allowed to depart Gallifrey. This is the most she can tell him without messing up the timeline. She manages to make the Rogue agree. Meanwhile, Rodan and Iris corner Leela and make a promise to relinquish command of the battalion in hopes that she won't find Gregory's ship. However, Leela puts up a fight and Rodan and Iris only manage to make it back to 3461 by the skin of their teeth. Shortly after, Francis follows. They return to find that nothing had changed and that histories remain on the same course. They ask the Rogue if he remembers what happened and he tells them that he has no memory of Francis speaking to him at the time. And they theorise that the time travel portal can't actually change history and instead it only creates new parallel universes, which means nothing to what they're trying to do and it's completely useless. Meanwhile, Will and Phaedra have their dreams again, except this time they can interact. They talk to each other and they're both very concerned. However, Will is woken up by Belinda quite promptly and he's furious. They have an intense argument which leads to a very emotional scene where Will explains his dreams to Belinda, who breaks down crying, saying, "I don't know what I am. Am I human? Am I a Shinron? Am I a Time Lord? Am I even Will Adams? Was I ever Will Adams?" Finally, we focus on the Rogue and Unity as they respond to Osmus's ultimatum. The Rogue answers Osmus's broadcast, and they have an intense dialogue over video call, as the Rogue agrees to meet with them on Gallifrey to negotiate an end to this, as well as a possible return of Zenna and Gordra. Osmus reluctantly agrees. The Rogue orders a group of undercover Unity members to voyage to Gallifrey ahead of him, and secretly disperse himself throughout the Citadel to terminate the Council of Six on his order. Osmus informs the Council to be ready to kill the Rogue if necessary, both of them plotting against each other at the same time. The Rogue arrives in Gallifrey and is taken to the Council chamber. The Council lay out exactly what they want as part of an unconditional surrender. The Rogue negotiates and rallies for a method of peaceful cohabitation, with freedom of movement between each side. This intrigues the Council, but they ultimately vote against it. They ask the Rogue for a complete unconditional surrender. The Rogue secretly sends a signal to his undercover agents, and they surround the Council room, pulling out guns on all the Vex. Osmus laughs and then tells the Rogue that this won't work for one simple reason. It then transforms into incorporeal form and disappears. The rest of the Council follow, leaving the Rogue and his agents speechless. They could be anywhere by now. The Rogue takes advantage of this time and tells the agents to spread out and locate Zenna and Gordra. The Rogue ventures down to his old laboratory and finds Everwick in there. The Rogue recognises her as Irene, as he remembers her as one of his aides during his presidency, which is retconned in, of course, because we never saw Lindy Booth actually by his side. He asks her if she'll hand over a machine which is in the corner of the room. Irene asks what it is, but the Rogue simply states it's the key to our salvation. Feeling a debt to the Rogue, she hands it over. After mind games and tricks with the Vex, including one of them pretending to be Zenna, they manage to locate the prisoners. However, Gordra won't leave without Phaedra, but Phaedra doesn't want to go and be taken prisoner again. She gives Gordra a kiss and then she turns into her incorporeal form. We then see her in this form leave Gallifrey and venture off into space. The Rogue, Zenna and Gordra with his agents manage to get off Gallifrey in the nick of time. Alone and emotionally unstable, Phaedra must work out the truth behind what exactly she is and what purpose she has. However, she won't have to do it alone, as an old friend returns to see her through this ordeal. We begin with the Rogue, Zenna and Gordra arriving on the Vex sphere. They meet with the rest of Unity as well as Will and Belinda. Gordra is upset that Phaedra has gone and rallies for Unity to find her. Then we cut to Phaedra as she arrives on a deserted rocky planet. She walks its terrain and settles down inside a cave. We then see a montage over there, as for a few days she finds food and water, etc, etc. She goes to sleep and she experiences her dream again, except when she and Will go to the entrance hall, standing there is a man shrouded in shadow. She steps forward and sees who it is. She sees his face. It's Gregory. He simply says, "Hello, Cordell." She turns around, Will has vanished. She's visibly scared and asks how Gregory's here. He replies with, "I'm not. I'm in the Matrix. But I've come back to see Cordell, because I love you." With an evil smile on his face, we cut to the opening titles. Back in the cave, Phaedra's trying to get some sleep again, but she looks to her side and sees Grigori lying next to her. She jumps up in fear and asks why he's returned now, and why he is here. He tells her that he's here because she needs him, now more than ever. She of course finds this hard to believe. Grigori asks if she remembers her life before she ascended. Phaedra said no, as it was custom to raise those memories after ascension in the early days. Grigori tells her that the key to her destiny, her dreams, and Will's destiny lies in who she used to be. Phaedra asks him to tell her then, since he knows so much. He laughs erratically and says that he doesn't know. He grabs onto her arm and they peer inside the dark bridge of Grigori's flagship, the one in which she spent all those years with Phaedra in, before Doctor Vengeance. Grigori asks if she can remember this place, if she can remember how close they were. Phaedra tells him that it was all a lie, a cover. She was sent back in time in another dimension to infiltrate the ship of the Lord President long before the Time Lords made any deals with the Vardens. She said they didn't plan on the ship getting lost, and she had to think on her feet, invent this lie, and fall in love. We walk into Grigori's quarters, and we see a flashback of Grigori and Cordell kissing and tearing off each other's clothes. Grigori remarks that he was so very much in love with her. Phaedra chuckles and says he was in love with everyone on that ship, that he slept with nearly every officer. So what love was actually real? Grigori grabs onto her and rips off her top. She screams in pain. Then she angrily charges at Grigori, tackling him to the ground. She puts her hand around his throat and tries to strangle him. Instead, Grigori laughs as he says that he's already dead. You made very sure of that, Cordell. Grigori explains the truth to her identity lies within her, and she must accept that. She must accept that and move on. Grigori takes her hand, and Put Your Dreams Away by Frank Sinatra begins to play. He then asks Phaedra to dance. Phaedra gulps uncomfortable, but understanding why she must do this, she takes Grigori's hand and they begin to dance through the ship, a spotlight following them. As they do this, Grigori asks her about her life and they have a conversation about it. Phaedra reveals at one point she may have felt something for him before the tables turns. Grigori decides to talk through the facts. You and Will are both having the same dream, showing you reaching some sort of joint destiny, and your past Time Lord life has something to do with that destiny. The song finishes and they stop dancing. Grigori asks if she's ready to find out the truth. Phaedra nods slowly and they appear inside the Panopticon, busy and lively. Grigori explains that no one can see them, they are only observers, and they are on the day that she was ascended to Vex form, in the Sereti dimension. They walk to the bowels of the Citadel, to the versatile evolutionary Xerophile laboratory, Vex for short, and they see a dozen Time Lords being taken in. They are put onto beds and scientists come over and start dissecting them, injecting stuff into them, etc, etc. They watch as they almost feel sick. It looks disgusting. Phaedra states that she's glad she doesn't remember this happening to her. Meanwhile on Gallifrey we cut to Ale as he reports the Mitterheimer have failed on Earth, but he has dealt with them. The council debates their next action. Eric suggests that perhaps they should just give up, return to the Sereti dimension and live there in bliss in a universe completely surrounded by other Vex, with no other races. They contemplate this thought, as no one had thought of it. It's interesting. However, they put it to a vote and it's voted down. Eric then suggests another idea. She's been working on a bomb, which when set off will initiate the process of ascension in anyone exposed to the radiation, as within the radiation it contains universal Vardan DNA. However, this is very painful and should only be used as a final resort. They vote on it though, and everyone except, ironically, Eric votes to use it now on Gallifrey, and then every single habited planet they come across. Eric argues, as she says it would be cruel, we are the Vex, we are kind, but they ignore her. Then we cut back to Phaedra and Grigori, as they see the Howl walk in to the laboratory and give a speech to the newly ascended Vex. And then they follow the Howl into her office. Then we cut to the 11th Doctor waking up. He walks through the Citadel, and it's busy, filled with Vex. He's confused. He walks to the office, but instead he finds the Howl, with Phaedra and Grigori watching, but he can't see them. He asks who she is, and she explains what has happened, and now it's time to be ascended. The Doctor asks where the rogue is. The Howl tells him that she took pity on him, but the same will not happen for you. The Doctor tries to fight back, but the Howl restrains him by using their telekinetic abilities, takes him down to the laboratory. We see him ascended in graphic detail, he's ripped apart, screaming in pain. Cut to Phaedra and Grigori's reactions. A Varden is brought in and the same is done. They are both placed in a closed off room and merged and ascended to Vex form. The 11th Doctor then leaves the room, now ascended, and the Howl tells him to purge his memories and pick a new form. We see him transform into a person we know as Phaedra. The Howl asks him to pick a new name, and she says, Phaedra. Grigori says to Phaedra, now you know who you are. And she responds with, I was the Doctor. They snap back to the spaceship and the music begins again. They begin dancing again and they talk about what they've just seen. Phaedra says she doesn't understand what Will has to do with this, and Gregory states it will all become clear, but here's a clue. Ascension required 2 races to come together to make one. Perhaps the resurrection of a Time Lord requires a similar process. They dance throughout the ship, tears rolling from Phaedra's eyes, and then Gregory disappears in a blink. Phaedra still standing there, and then she appears back in the damp cave. The music's still playing, and then cut to end credits. With the Vex ready to detonate their Ascension bomb, Unity must work quickly to get as many Gallifreyans off the planet as possible. Meanwhile, Phaedra and Will must finally come together to achieve their long-awaited destiny. The 2-part finale begins with the Council of 6 enter the lab and they see the bomb. Eric demonstrates to them how it will work with the simulation, but she pleads them that this is a bad idea and not to do it. We then follow Phaedra as she wakes back up in her cave, alone. But not before long, she starts touching her head as she gets a headache and falls to the ground. We see it cut to a dark black room, and she stands there alone. Ahead of her, Eric appears. Phaedra remarks that it's been years since she's used telepathic communication. Eric tells her that it's an emergency and it's all her fault. She warns Phaedra about the bomb and asks if she can do anything about it. Phaedra lands on the Vex sphere and she's immediately arrested. She's taken to the rogue Francis and Iris and she tells them about the bomb. They don't know if they can trust her, but the rogues persuade them to take a chance. Unity decide that the most sensible option in this situation would be to attempt an evacuation of Gallifrey. They will need to evacuate approximately 3 billion remaining Gallifreyans and Time Lords stuck on the planet, requiring 1.5 million ships. They realise that they only have a fleet of 1,000 ships, and they would either have to go multiple runs, which would be very dangerous, or they could just try and get as many people off the planet as possible. Phaedra then takes the rogue aside to have a private word. She tells him that she believes he should check the prison block underneath the citadel. The rogue asks why, and she just says she remembers something the Hal once said, referring to something the Hal said last episode. Iris begins the preparations for the evacuation, and makes a rousing speech in front of all the crews of said 1,000 ships. She tells them, if necessary, give up their lives for this, so they can get back their people, the people of our universe and that planet. They all clap and cheer and prepare to make the journey. The rogue and Phaedra go down to the prison block and walk along it. All the cells appear to be empty, but Phaedra tells them they must look for one with someone in it. They talk during this search, and Phaedra reveals her identity as the Ascended Doctor. The rogue smiles with joy and says, "This solves all my problems. I always needed 2. Before anything else can be said, they come across a locked cell. The door opens, and inside a very old, very weak version of Jacoby Rogue, from the Seretti dimension. I'll call him Seretti Rogue from now on. The rogue asks why he wasn't ascended, and he explains briefly. They patch him up and take him back to the main operations lounge. Will and Belinda enter the lounge and they volunteer to lead one of the ships in evacuation. Iris gives them permission, but the rogue and Phaedra enter and tell them they can't. Will asks why, and the rogue says, "Your purpose, your destiny. Now we have Phaedra here, it can be fulfilled." Belinda asks if she can go though, as she feels she might as well do something worthwhile, and she can make a difference. The rogue says that as long as Will is okay with it, she can. Will reluctantly allows her. The rogue asks if she can find Zenna, and tells her to stay on the Vex sphere, at his request. Belinda boards Zenna's ship, and she finds her in the bridge. She tells her that the rogue is putting together some big plan or something to do with Will and Phaedra, and he needs her. Zenna gulps. She almost understands something, and she instantly gets up and leaves. However, she stops as she is about to run out the door and turns back to tell Belinda to stay safe and kick some Vex ass. Zen arrives in the lounge, and the rogue says that they should now have everyone. Seretti Rogue explains that he was there at the creation of the Vex, and such he understands their biology better than anyone in this universe. The fleet leave the Vex sphere and voyage to Gallifrey. Will asks the rogue and Phaedra to please explain what on earth's going on. Phaedra tells him who she is. Will replies with, "Well, I'm not a Vex, I can't be the Doctor. What am I for?" The rogue responds with, "No, you are just Will Adams. Until 12 years ago when I brought you to Gallifrey. Originally, you were just here to deal with the threat of the Bannermen. We scanned Earth and we found you, a Shimron, something that would be extremely useful in our ongoing conflicts with the Bannermen. But when your use came to an end after the Bannerman genocide, there were talks of returning you to Earth. But myself and my head scientist at the time, Caldera, were devising ways of experimenting with Time Lord biology. We created the Valiard, for example. The Doctor was someone who we were aware was in his final incarnation, and we needed a backup option in case anything happened, so we selected you. To give you a use, we drugged you with an extract of the Doctor's DNA. For the last 10 years you have been drugged every single day by Francis, under my direct orders. It was thought that if we had a DNA match of the Doctor, then coupling that with his mind from the Matrix, put both together and resurrect him. Will is lost for words. Angry and frustrated, he breaks down as he can't believe the betrayal. The fleet reaches Gallifrey and they begin the evacuation. Space battles between the Vex and Unity. Ground evacuations, people dying everywhere. The Rogue then goes on to explain that after the Doctor's funeral, he had Francis knock Will unconscious and kidnap him, taking him to the Rogue's laboratory. The Rogue says we attempted resurrection, but it failed, as there wasn't enough of the Doctor's genetic template there. However, now we have 2 receptors that can be used to take the Doctor's consciousness from the Matrix and resurrect him. The Rogue tells Zenda to restrain Will and strap him to a chair. Phaedra sits in another chair next to him. The Rogue places the machine in the middle of them and attaches them both to it through neural implants. Soretti Rogue calibrates the machine for Vex biology, then nods and says it's time. The Rogue and Zenda place their hands on the machine, and their handprints embed themselves onto the outside of it as the screen reads Matrix interfaced, and then it says DNA match. And the Rogue presses a button, and it begins. Meanwhile, Belinda's ship reaches the surface, and she starts loading her evacuees on. The Council 6 detonate the bomb all over Gallifrey. We see people transforming into Vex painfully, and it's horrible. Belinda's ship is compromised. She can't get off the planet. She's been infected. We see her and all her passengers ascended. Francis and Iris, leading the mission, make the tough call to leave all ships company on the surface and leave Gallifrey for good. Only 700 of their ships are safely in orbit, and they decide to abandon 300. We see a blue glow engulf Gallifrey as the ships jump away. Will and Phaedra scream out in pain. Their skin starts to melt away. Their skin goes bright red. A deafening sound chimes the machine. A beam of light comes out and both of them form together in the middle. A humanoid body comes together, and over minutes of pain and screaming, Will and Phaedra's body fades away, and in its place a new body. But it looks like an amalgamation of the two of them. This character will be known as Connie for confidence. To film this, scenes featuring Connie will be shot with both David Tennant and Emma Caulfield performing each line, and then using CGI both performances will be amalgamated together. Just to be clear, Connie is not the 14th Doctor. Connie is like a side Doctor between 13th and 14th incarnations, a temporary vessel for the Doctor's consciousness. Connie would be counted in the same sort of regard as the Watcher or the Valley Guard. After this, the Rogue clicks another button, and a beam of green light zaps into Connie, and their eyes open wide. Zenda walks up to them and says, "Hello, Doctor," and Connie simply says, "Zenda, how good it is to see you again," and then we cut to the end credits. The Doctor is back in the form of the Convolus, and they are there just in time, as the Vex are planning to ascend the population of Earth, and if Unity aren't careful, the entire universe. We begin with videotape footage. A caption reads, "Psychological evaluation, D3C9, Irene." Irene sits in front of the camera, a frail old woman, many years later. A woman asks her to say the first word that comes into her head when she says a word. She says Gallifrey. Irene responds with failure. Then Vex. Irene says misguided. Then Ascension. Irene, after a pause, says trap. Then we cut back to the present day. As the Council of Six walk on the soil of Gallifrey with bliss and glee, they remark how everyone on this rotten planet is now a Vex, and they celebrate. They congratulate Eric on such a resounding success. However, Eric isn't overjoyed. I'll suggest they target Earth and finish what the Mitterhigh started. The Council vote on it, and all but Eric agree. On the Vex sphere, Connie has been taken to the infirmary to have tests done on them. Soretti Rogue conducts them and determines that all is not well. He tells them that the DNA is struggling to interface with the existing DNA from Will and from the Vardin that the 11th Doctor ascended with. Connie has less than 12 hours to live until they will regenerate, burning away all traces of Will and Phaedra and becoming the Doctor fully, the 14th incarnation. The fleet, led by Iris, Francis and Gaudra, arrive at the dimensional gateway to the Svetu dimension. Iris gives the order for the fleet to remain in end space while she, along with Francis and Gaudra, take the flagship to the Vex sphere to consult with the Rogue and what action they must take next. The Vex fleet reaches the orbit of Earth, and they plan to send a shuttle down with one Vex and the bomb, and then detonate it on the surface. However, they receive a signal from the surface with Time Lord ID signature. They elect to send Gonnet and Ale down to the surface to investigate. They take a shuttle down with the bomb, but with the intention to detonate it after the investigation. They track the signal down to the Master's clinic. They storm it and find the Master within. The Master persuades them to take him as prisoner instead of outright killing him or sending him in the blast. Gonnet contacts the council and tells them that they have taken the Master prisoner. She asks how to proceed. The council decide to continue with the detonation but have the Master brought up in a shuttle to the fleet. Eric sends the signal secretly, relaying the position of the Vex fleet to the Vex sphere. On the Vex sphere, they receive a signal. Connie, along with the Rogue and Zender, decide that they're going to take the fleet and save Earth from the devastating reality that Gallifrey has faced. Connie addresses everyone in the Vex version of Panopticon, which is packed full of Unity members, and they also broadcast across the fleet. They make a rousing speech about how we must act now and save Earth, and they also talk about how Earth is so dear to them, talking from Will's and perhaps also the Doctor's perspective. Everyone applauds them before the ships are boarded again. About 1,000 refugees decide to go down to the surface of the Vex sphere and not be part of the battle, but the rest go. The Master arrives on the Vex mothership and he explains that he wants to help the Vex with the ascension of this futile little planet. Unity's fleet follow the path set out from the Vex fleet and follow it to Earth in 2013. They reach the orbit of Earth and face directly with the Vex fleet. The Rogue hails the Vex mothership Osimus answers, and the Rogue tells them to back down or they will be forced to open fire. Osimus laughs as he calls his bluff, saying that he wouldn't risk the whole survival of the Gallifreyan race. The Rogue then simply says, "You obviously don't know me too well then," and the ship fires, targeting many of the smaller Vex ships, destroying them. The Rogue smiles again and says, "Back down, leave Earth alone, and let us coexist in peace, or I will destroy every single last Vex scum in this universe." A large battle ensues, the largest space battle we've ever seen before, topping everything we've seen this season. It lasts approximately an hour and left non-stop, with multiple plot-relevant scenes over its course, which I'll go through. Firstly, we follow Ale and Gonnet on the surface of Earth as they activate the bomb. This is our ticking clock for the battle, and the tension is constantly built up as we see just how long they have left. Halfway through, Connie and Rodan venture down to the planet to stop the bomb, and they manage to defuse it in just the nick of time. Al and Gonnet end up dying on their escape from Earth as their shuttle's shot down as they make their way back up to the mothership. We also focus on the Master as he double crosses the Vex and steals their time travel technology from their ships to interface with his TARDIS so he can leave Earth in 2013. However, he does this with the help of Erowick, who believes that stranding the Vex without time travel technology or the ability to cross into the threatened dimension, which is part of such technology, will bring them closer to peace. By the end of the battle, the Master has left, Erowick has been taken prisoner by the Vex, Al and Gonnet are dead, Gorgia also dies heroically, risking his life for Connie, and both fleets have taken heavy casualties, and very soon they could be both blown up. Connie opens a video link with Osimus and suggests they negotiate an end to this. Osimus reluctantly agrees. They both send shuttles down to the Earth and meet in the Master's clinic alone. We watch Connie and Osimus negotiate a settlement over a montage. We see them both sign a deal. Connie goes back to the fleet and so does Osimus to his. And we see them announce the deal at the same time, intercutting. With only a few thousand ships and no time travel tech, they've agreed to join forces in search of a new home, declare peace and allow the two races to mix, however they want, as they're in search of a new home. There is little resistance to this deal, due to the circumstances both races have found themselves in over the past 10 years, and the general reception is quite positive. The Rogue names Francis the president of the fleet, and Osimus is named the vice president. They declare Gallifrey is no more, the Vex no more, Unity is no more, the Seal no more, they're only people wanting hope. The Rogue then tells Francis that he won't be joining the fleet, but instead he shall be forging his own path. However, Seretti Rogue decides to stay with the fleet. Then Connie departs in a shuttle, and they go down to a field on Earth, where they land and begin to burn up inside. We flash into a dark room, entirely empty but for a hospital bed. On it's Connie. The picture is blurred and the sound is muffled. Next to the bed stand Will and Phaedra. Phaedra turns to Will and asks, "Is it our time now?" And Will smiles, "Yes, I think so." They both touch hands and a golden energy forms between the two. The energy then shoots out their hands into Connie. We cut back to the real world and the energy engulfs Connie and they regenerate. The flame burns away from Connie, with the faces of Will and Phaedra departing as well. And then it's replaced by the face of the 14th Doctor, Samantha Bond. She then says, "Something isn't right." We cut to the fleet departing, and we see Erowick let out of his prison cell, and a Vex guard tells her it's all over. Then we cut to a caption reading 972 years later, and we cut back to the video footage from earlier of Erowick at the beginning, and we see that again. Then we cut to the fleet continuing off into the distance, so many light years away from Earth but still far away from their destination. Over 900 years later, they still aren't there. And then we cut to the final Panopticon end credits. So there we go, Panopticon Series 7. We have a new Doctor, Samantha Bond, yay! The 14th Doctor, who will debut in Doctor Who Genesis on the 23rd of November 2013. I can now exclusively reveal the theatrical poster for this film, which would have actually been released the night of this episode airing. Made in collaboration with Soundsmith Productions, who I must also thank for making the Panopticon theme tune for Series 4 and 567. So how's the Doctor's resurrection going to be dealt with Doctor Who Genesis if we've seen it here? You have to wait and see. What will happen in that film? You'll have to wait and see. And most importantly, when will it be released? You'll have to wait and see. God knows, this one took me long enough. Until the next time, goodbye.